Kdog back here. Going to take a look at some more movies. It's that time. It's time for another Kdog's movie weekend. Wasn't able to do it. As you can tell, I'm a little congested, battling some bugs. But yeah, we got another weekend coming up. We're going to do some more movies, and we're going to talk about some specific things. There was some, matter of fact, the first thing we're going to talk about is quite special. It was quite special for me. Now, I'm not going to review the movie because I've talked about it twice in the different various forms, but this one was kind of special. So, what happened? Well, Wednesday evening, I was treated to a theatrical screening of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, and the reason being is because Columbia Pictures has partnered with Fathom Events, and of course Fathom Events is still doing their big screen classics. The next one they are doing is The Neverending Story, which turns 40 this year. But also Sony Pictures has partnered with Fathom Events to also do their thing because it is the 100th anniversary of Columbia Pictures. That's a big celebration. So what they are doing is sending several of Columbia's most popular and notable films back into theaters for 2 nights. So the first one was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The next one that they have announced is Lawrence of Arabia. So if you get a chance to see your favorite movie, a part of these big screen classics or a Fathom event, do it. Those are quite neat to participate in. Where it gets a little troublesome is the times, because they only do it on 2 nights, and it's usually a Sunday and or a Wednesday. So it's in the middle of your work week schedule. But you know, let's say a Sunday, take a matinee, you know, go see it. So, and the reason why I want to talk about Close Encounters of the Third Kind again is because seeing this movie on the big screen was really a treat. It really was, because the movie plays as well as it should. It actually belongs on the big screen. It does really not belong on your TV. But at the time that the movie was made, there was, you know, home video was still brand new. As a matter of fact, Hollywood movies were coming to television. And so it was, you know, this was a special time in filmmaking when directors got to do projects like this, get them on the big screen, but television and home video came along and kind of altered them a little bit, because they were trying to take rectangular shapes and put them in square images, and so, you know, what they call panning and scanning. But with Close Encounters, seeing it on the big screen, you notice the little details. That's what was kind of neat about this. You notice the little details that you cannot really see, or you don't really notice watching it on your TV. And now hold that thought for a second. Now, what was also interesting is walking out of the theater. There was probably at most 10 people in the theater. And of course, when they do these Fathom events, your theater's not going to put them in your big auditoriums or the or a premium large format. They're not going to do it because they know it's not going to pack the house really. But they know that there's some people that will come to see it and enjoy it. So Wednesday night, as I'm walking out of the theater, I ended up talking with a man. I believe he said he worked at one time for the Muncie Star Press. Of course, if you know anything about this movie, it takes place in Muncie, Indiana. Well, that's where I went to see it, was in Muncie, Indiana. Unfortunately, the movie was not filmed in Muncie. Muncie, unfortunately, lacked some geographical things that were in the script that needed to take place. So as I was leaving the theater, I was talking with this gentleman who worked for the Star Press, and he informed me, he said that there was a scout, and of course I did read the newspaper, there was a newspaper article, but he said there was a gentleman scouting for Columbia Pictures at the time. And he had, they had come to Muncie and looked around and said, well, they said, well, there's some things that we need that you don't have. But to clarify, and we ended up talking about some of the locations that are mentioned in the film, one of them is in Muncie, actually, but the other one was actually in a nearby town called Newcastle. Harper Valley, when they mention when Dreyfuss is in his pickup truck and they mention Harper Valley, that's in a nearby town. That's not in Muncie, actually. It's actually in another county. It's actually in Henry County in a town called Newcastle, where Harper Valley is. However, Cornbread Road, I have found, kind of driven on it, there is, with Cornbread Road, there's nothing on it. So when they say about power must have been restored out in the Cornbread Road area, there's not a lot out on the Cornbread Road to restore power to. I'm sorry, there's not much out there. It's just like a little bridge, like intersection like thing, and there's not much power out there. But the other thing is, like I said, when you see this in the theater, you notice little details on the big screen that you're not going to see on your TV. And now I have seen them, and I'm going to point one of them out, and this is where where you notice film flaws. Okay, one of the things I'm not even going to show you because there's just too many of them to count, because I think it was just the limitations of the technology at the time, and obviously this is actually both are limitations in the technology. The first one is obviously I noticed that several scenes were out of focus, and it wasn't because of projector. It was actually because they were filmed that way. And partially it was scenes that required a lot where characters may be looking at the UFOs, where they are hit with bright lights. And if you know anything about photography or video or film photography, lighting can change your focus. Like even with this camera here, you may have noticed, like some of my other videos, that if I walk into another room where the lighting is different, or if I move my arm or something like that and the lighting changes, the focus changes. Because I have autofocus turned on, and so, but in the movies they manually focus the cameras, and so it's difficult. So at that time I noticed that if there was a key scene, obviously you want to be looking at this character speaking, that character is in focus, but Also, what's just as important is, let's say, something or people that are around him or her. They may be slightly out of focus. Of course, there's a scene where all these people are alongside the road and they think what they're going to see is some UFOs. Turns out it's helicopters coming their way, but what they see are these bright lights. And then the shot focuses on this older couple. When it's in the natural light, they're slightly out of focus. Just a little bit. But once the light hits them, they really come into focus. But also, there's also in the same scene, there's a part where Richard Dreyfuss and Melinda Dillon are sitting with the little boy, and the little boy's building the shape of the mountain out of dirt. He's just kind of playing in the mud and forming this shape. Also, because the thing is, it's important that the shape be in the shot when Melinda Dillon is looking at it, because it's now sparking her interest. But the shape is when it comes to that shot, the shape is in focus, but Melinda Dillon's face is slightly out of focus. And so I think that was just the limitations of the time, because obviously, almost, well, I'm almost going to say 45 years has passed since the movie has been released, and they've come out with different cameras and different lenses and new technologies to where we can focus images a whole lot better. But one is going to be, I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about this as I show it to you, and hopefully this doesn't get taken down by the YouTube censors for copyright. But I'm going to show you a special effects flaw, because this movie was made. You don't get movies like this anymore, folks. We have all the digital technology in the world now, and so we can make anything inside the computer. Well, this movie did not have one single shot of CGI being used for this movie. The only computer graphics that were used was amber type for text when they're trying to send up the notes up into outer space. And what keeps coming back are numbers. There's a close-up on the screen and the air traffic control, but it's all amber type screens. But all the models of the ships were models shot on sound stages against backgrounds, brightly lit, all lit up, and they were shot in fog. They were shot at different speeds to create different type of movements and things like that. So, but there's one shot I want to show you, and I noticed it was a big flaw. A big flaw. I don't think anybody noticed this. So, we're going to look at the TV, and I'm going to try to talk this through. Probably try to get the TV and the image inside. So there won't be any sound of the movie, but I want to show you this special effects flaw in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay, so let me crouch down here. So I'm going to point something out here. This is the scene in which the mothership lands, and as you can see, we have these characters here. They're putting on their sunglasses because it is so bright. And so this gentleman here, he puts on his sunglasses. Okay, so here this shot is, this is all optical printed. Okay, this was done by a huge miniature model, and there's some animation lighting effects to create the illusion of, you know, all this bright neon and all this stuff. So and you have all the human actors right here. So I'm going to show you just this little flaw, and I just noticed this because every time I've seen this movie, this is like, oh, this is a cool special effect. As a matter of fact, on the soundtrack album, this is the image that you see. If you have the gatefold, if you have the original soundtrack album, the gatefold, this is the image that they have on there. So, yeah, we have all the human actors. They're walking towards, let's go into slow motion here, frame by frame. And we have all the humans, they are down here. So the ship is coming down. And as you can see, where the people are going to come out, let's go full speed here. Okay, stop. Pay attention to these lighting fixtures right here. If you can see this, I hope you can. But pay attention to these lighting fixtures real closely. So I'm going to go slow speed, frame by frame here. Okay, here's the edge of the ship, okay? Okay. Ship is still coming down. Does anybody see something strange yet? The edge of the ship is right here, but why are the lights coming through it? Why are the lighting fixtures coming through the mothership? Yeah, they're coming through the mothership. So it's just one of those things you're not really looking at, because you're just looking at this come down in this huge structure. But it's going through because of the limitations. As a matter of fact, yeah, right there. There's the edge of the ship. There's the lighting fixture. So, this was the limitations of optical photography, optical special effects. So, they would have had to, and if you know anything about the history of this film, the reason why there's 3 different cuts is because Columbia Pictures actually kind of forced Spielberg to hurry up and finish the movie. So that's why there's a theatrical cut, a special edition cut, and a director's cut. So the thing of this was going to cost a lot of money to take out those lighting fixtures. And so that's the film flaw I found with Close Encounters. So there's some other ones in there too, like there's some scenes where the smaller ships come down and they got a little spotlight and they kind of go real quick. So, but yeah, the ship has gone past the lighting fixtures, and these lighting fixtures are shining through the post-production elements. But that's not what you're looking at. You're looking at other things. So yeah, you're looking at this thing come down, this gigantic bowl of a ship. So, so that's the film flaw I caught in the cinema. And I since see it now on my 58-inch TV set. Well, it's time to begin the movie watching experience. So tonight, for the first night, we're going to take a look at a film. I purchased this when I was home on FMLA, which means Family Medical Leave, for my surgery. Didn't have time to watch it, but it's from 1982. It's a film called The Gray Fox. I know very little about this movie. All I know is that it stars Richard Farnsworth from The Straight Story, and it's directed by Philip Borsos, who ended up directing a film called One Magic Christmas that my family watches every year. But the story is supposedly about this stagecoach robber who is gone away to prison for a long, long time, and then comes back into society, and how much it's changed. So originally this was, I believe, was released by United Artists Theater, not United Artists Theaters, but United Artists Pictures. But it's produced by the Canadian Film Development Corporation and the Canadian theater chain Famous Players. So sit back and let's watch The Gray Fox. Okay, so The Gray Fox. If you notice, the lighting changed. Well, I kind of just went to bed because I was just so exhausted after seeing the movie last night. But this movie is... it's not a Western, but it's pretty close, but it's not enough to be called a Western. Because it takes place in 1901. It's based on a true story, actually, about Bill Miner. He was who they called the Gentleman Bandit. And he was known notoriously throughout the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, for robbing stagecoaches. Well, after 33 years in San Quentin, he is released. He met parole, he got released, and so he is ready to join society. Well, that's all until, well, of course, he moves back home, or moves to Washington State, where he's going to be staying with his sister. And then he ends up going to his first movie. The silent film had come out. And so, and also Bill is experiencing new things, because by that time, no one's using the stagecoach anymore. A little thing called the automobile had come out, and people are taking trains mostly for travel. And of course, the automobile, there's still some people using horses. And he experiences his first movie. Now, the film that he sees is a classic, well-known silent film. The Great Train Robbery, which had the iconic shot of the cowboy looking right at the camera and pointing the pistol. That inspires Bill to reignite some of his old habits and flees up to Canada, where he makes robbing trains and things like that. He was also the first man to coin the term "get your hands up." So, yeah, this film, it's a very... Also, what's strange is that because you have Jackie Burroughs playing his love interest in this film, and it also kind of becomes a kind of a love story, because he falls in love with her, and yeah, it's an interesting film. It's not what you would traditionally think as a Western. Um, Even though it has those motifs of, robbing banks, train robbery, horseback and things like that. But however, it's not, it's more of a, it's not the typical Western that you would think it is. It's, and then even for 92 minutes, I think it's kind of a slow-paced film. So you got to be patient with it for a little bit. So, but yeah, it's quite an interesting story. Richard Farnsworth, very underrated actor, I gotta say, for his time. He originally was a Hollywood stuntman who turned actor. He's also been in films like The Outlaw Josie Wales, doing a small part, not like doesn't have really any speaking lines, but he does a small part in The Outlaw Josie Wales. Of course, he was nominated for Best Actor for The Straight Story, which is another great movie. I've talked about The Straight Story and how memorable that film was when I saw it. But yeah, definitely he's an underrated actor, I think, Richard Farnsworth. So, but yeah, The Gray Fox from it's on Kino Lorberer. So if you can find this on Amazon, pick it up, give it a watch. So now we're going to go on to our next film. Well, continuing on, the second movie for this evening was the John Wayne classic, The Sons of Katie Elder. Now, I went to my parents' house to watch this, actually, and just thought my old man would want to watch it this evening. And so we had dinner and, of course, popped in the DVD and watched this. We always, of course, me and my dad always enjoy watching The Sons of Katie Elder. And there's just something about it, even though technically John Wayne is not a good guy in it, really. I mean, he is a bandit. all brothers are bandits, but in this case they're falsely accused of some stuff that happens in town when really it's the guy who's trying to buy up the town, like I don't want to say a politician, but like just like a cattle rancher who's trying to buy up the town and cause a lot of problems cause a lot of problems in the town and kind of keep everybody in control. And he's that type of person where he was, he'll even control who gets elected to political office, and eventually that's not what happens, but he's that type of person that would do that. But the four brothers show up to Clearwater, Texas, to where their mother has just passed away. Their mother being Katie. Sorry, I'm getting comfortable at the same time. Their mother, Katie, has just passed away. And, of course, she was a well-beloved woman to the town. And they always say it's a shame that she had four sons who were kind of behaving the way that they were. It's an interesting movie to come from the John Wayne canon, and it's definitely one of his more popular ones. It was a film made at the time when he had just battled cancer, And so it was the first time that he had, it was the first movie back from defeating cancer, and so it was a big project that John Wayne needed to accomplish to show, hey, I'm still around. I can still make movies, and I can still draw box office. Of course, it's a film that it reunites him with Dean Martin playing his brother Tom, and also has Dennis Hopper in one of his earlier roles, Earl Holliman, Michael Anderson Jr. playing the kid brother, of course also James Gregory as the main villain in the film. So as well as, and he has a henchman played by George Kennedy. So yeah, you know what the type of film that we're getting into. Of course, yeah, I kind of have the television on in the background here. At this point, there's been a tragedy in the nation, that there was an assassination attempt on President Trump. This afternoon, I know this isn't movie related, but I'm just kind of trying to follow up what's going on here. But yeah, the sons of Katie Elder. So I guess you can tie this up and say, stand up for what's right, because that's what happens in the film. Is that the four brothers? Yeah, they are bandits, but in different respects, because they haven't seen each other in several years. But when mom dies, they all get together and find out that they have been messed with, and so they end up having to settle a score. So it's Sunday morning. It's well over midnight. Just kind of watch all this kind of go down on the news. Yeah. So that's where we're kind of at right now. So stay tuned. I'll probably have one more film we'll take a look at. But yeah, also trying to watch the news and see President Trump was nearly assassinated. So so far what they've said is that it's a 20-year-old who they think is a 20-year-old who's from Pennsylvania. So they've somewhat, they're investigating right now. So let's turn this off and go to the next one. Okay, so we're going to try to squeeze in one more for this evening, and it's from 1979. It is the Francis Ford Coppola produced, Carol Ballard directed family classic, The Black Stallion. Now this is, of course, is the Criterion Collection edition. This came out in 1979, released by United Artists, starring Kelly Renault as our main character, Terry Garr and Mickey Rooney, along with Hoyt Axton as playing the good old dad here. So so we're going to squeeze in just one more film. It's The Black Stallion. So let's tune in, see what I think about it. So sit back, relax as we watch The Black Stallion. Okay, so that was The Black Stallion from 1979. Produced by Francis Ford Coppola and directed by Carol Ballard, which was I don't want to say it did fairly well for its time. It was a movie that came out and was very well received amongst critics and audiences alike. It was a family feature, rated G, obviously, released by United Artists. And, of course, the film takes place in the 1940s, I believe 1946. And we first meet this young boy by the name of Alec, played by Kelly Renault. He is with his dad, played by Hoyt Axton. They are on this ship. They're not very clear where they are headed, but obviously they're taking a trip, and the dad, he is on the ship, and so Alec witnesses them lock into a stable this beautiful, wild, untamable Black Stallion. And the dad's playing poker, and so Alec goes to tell his dad, hey, I saw this most amazing thing, but the dad's like, hey, I'm busy right now, can't talk. But we see that the dad obviously won the poker game. Now, there was not just money at stake in this game, there was also possessions. Rubies and emeralds and little trinkets and things like that. But one of the things that he won was this little figure of a Black Stallion. And the dad proceeds to tell Alec this tale about Alexander the Great and Bucephalus, and how Alexander tamed Bucephalus, and how Bucephalus was this Black Stallion, with fire in his eyes and smoke coming out of his nose and all this. Well, then the ship that they are on, both Alec and his father, becomes shipwrecked. It gets tossed about in the sea, and Alec is marooned on this island all by himself. And so the horse ends up saving Alex's life, and takes him to the island, to get him to safety. But Alec, while he's on the island, he has to figure out how to survive, and he's just this kid, and so he has to figure out, okay, I'm going to have to find shelter, I'm going to have to find food, and of course the island has dangers of its own. Like, there's at one point where Alec is almost attacked by a king cobra, and of course the horse steps in and saves the day by stomping on the snake. But then it is rescued. But beforehand, Alec and the horse develop a relationship and a bond, because the horse is very, very spooked. He's not trusting of humans, but he develops this relationship with Alec, and of course are rescued, brought back to the United States and brought back home. and where Alec is living with his mother, played by Terry Garr. But and she agrees, okay, he can keep the horse, obviously, but the horse can't be cooped up in a residential backyard. So he takes off and ends up being captured by Henry, played by Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was this former, we find out that Mickey Rooney was once this very popular rider and trainer for horse racing. And at this point, Mickey Rooney he's at the end of his rope. He's I don't want to say but he's desperate for a winner. He's desperate to train that one last guy and that one last horse, get that one last win, so he can hang it up for good. Well, he finds it in Black and Alec. Not what he's exactly thinking of, but eventually he tells the boy, hey, if you clean up the stall, this will be his home, and you can come see him and be with him whenever you can or feel like it. You are more than welcome to come. But you gotta work for it. You gotta clean up the stall. You gotta feed him. You gotta water him. You gotta take care of him. The typical. There's a big responsibility to raising an animal. And then eventually Alec convinces him, hey, have you ever thought about training Black to be a racehorse? And it never really crosses his mind, and then, because at first he's thinking, no, because the horse is wild, he's untamable, he's fast, but he's a wild horse. He's not really domesticated, and plus, for animals like that, specific pedigrees are needed, and some things they call it pedigrees or documentation. Basically, they want to trace bloodline, like you would for dogs, rabbits, or anything like that. There has to be paperwork tracing bloodlines to make sure that the animal is a purebred animal. It's not mixed with, like, okay, you say he's a Black Stallion, but he's not mixed with some other breed of horse. They can't have that. So the rest of the film is where Henry trains Alec, and taming the horse to become rideable. And of course the kid gets tossed around. He can't really grip the reins properly, or it's going to hurt him, and by cutting his hands and whatnot. And it all leads up to the end where Alec gets to race Black, and of course it has a triumphant ending, and there's also flashbacks to when Alec and Black were alone on the island, and what he was doing on the island, because they show footage even when he's on the island, he rode Black, without a saddle or reins or anything like that. So he just grabbed hold of the horse's mane and just rode him. And you see him fall off and all this and that, but the rest of throughout the rest of the film, it's okay. We got to train the animal not just to be, the animal's going to do his natural instinct, but we got to train him to be domesticated. But it's but he's a wild spirited black stallion, and it's a nice little movie. This, however, it was a kids movie from back in 1979. Okay, it was this. Well, the screenplay was written by Melissa Matheson, Janine Rosenberg, and William D. Whitliff, or sometimes credited as Bill Whitliff. He was, of course, Melissa Matheson, we know, would go on to write E.T. Matter of fact, this was the film that Spielberg saw. He said, hey, I like what she did on the Black Stallion. I may like her to write another kids movie for me, which ended up being E.T. And William Whitliff, sometimes he's credited as Bill Whitliff. His credits have appeared on movies like The Cowboy Way with Woody Harrelson and Kiefer Sutherland, as well as The Perfect Storm, writing those scripts as well. So, also beautiful cinematography by Caleb Deschanel, actress Zooey Deschanel's father. Of course, Caleb Deschanel also worked with. He's worked with Richard Donner on some films. He was the director of photography on The Passion of the Christ. And regardless of what you think about Mel Gibson and The Passion of the Christ, you can't deny that The Passion of the Christ is a beautiful looking film, and I give credit to Caleb Deschanel and his camera eye and sense of lighting and color. But also you see that in this film as well. It's just the beautiful lighting and the cinematography. Now, it's not always bright and sunny in this film. There's a lot of shots that are completely different in contrast. Like there's some scenes where it is bright and sunny, and there's scenes where it is very cloudy and overcast. And so I think Caleb Deschanel did a fantastic job in some brilliant slow motion photography as well. So, and as well as underwater photography. So the man is a brilliant, I think one of the best, maybe one of my favorite cinematographers, and looking at his filmography. And so this was like I said, this was a kids movie in 1979. It spun off one sequel in which Kelly Renault, playing Alec, returned. It was later, in the later 80s, called the Black Stallion. No, it wasn't in the later 80s. I'm sorry, it was 1983, and it was released. It was just plainly called The Black Stallion Returns. It didn't do as well as this film, but it also, I'm going to say about 20 years later, there was another sequel called The Young Black Stallion, which was a IMAX film, 45-minute IMAX drama film produced by Walt Disney Pictures. Yeah, it was that one was exclusively shown in IMAX theaters. But The Black Stallion, it's a brilliant film. If you're, I'm going to say, like, if you are somebody who's my age or older, because I was the generation. I was not born in. I was born in '84. Okay, so, but 79 you know, it tailored to kids who were maybe my age and a little bit older. You know, like the early millennials, like older millennials and Gen X type kids, because you know it's a simple G-rated movie. There's no profanity in it. I don't know if what I'm getting at is I don't know if kids today would enjoy this film, because this was a film that is very, like I said, I'm speaking, you know, like I said, talked about the director of photography, Caleb Deschanel, and the work he did. It is a art film. It is very slow paced. It is very slow paced because you do not hear, you know, you maybe hear, there is dialogue at the first 5 minutes of the film. Then for about 45 minutes of the film, there is no dialogue. There is no dialogue. It is the boy and the horse bonding, and the only thing that comes out of the boy, like any sounds the boy makes, is he occasionally whistles at the horse, or he makes a sound, you know, like a popping sound with his mouth. That's it. Otherwise, you do not hear any lines of dialogue for about 45 minutes until Alec is rescued by a, you know, just by a ship that comes by and picks him up, and the horse. So, the Black Stallion. I would encourage you, if you can find the Criterion, you know, hey, the Barnes & Noble Criterion title sale, if you can find a copy of it, pick it up, because it's got some great stuff on it. The transfer in this was approved by Caleb Deschanel himself. It was mastered in 4K. They don't have a 4K disc out yet of this film. It's just the regular Blu-ray and or DVD. But also, but there's obviously some essays. There is some of the short films that Carol Ballard had made just prior to this movie, because Carol Ballard was not a dramatic filmmaker. He was a documentarian, and he was basically documenting. The films that they have here are Pigs, The Pearls, Priscilla, Rodeo, Seems Like Only Yesterday, and Crystallization. And there's there's an interview with Ballard and the Criterion Collection people. But Carol Ballard went on to direct other films. He directed Never Cry Wolf for Walt Disney Pictures. He also directed Fly Away Home in 1995 with, I think it was 1995, or mid-1990s, with Anna Paquin and Jeff Daniels, which kind of fits in the vein of this, in which it's Anna Paquin. She raises a flock of geese after the mother has been killed, and of course they have to fly south for the winter. So, do check that film out as well. It's not as memorable as the Black Stallion. I would, guess again, I don't know how kids today would take to this, because it is, again, it's very, very slow paced, and it doesn't really start to pick up until the boy comes back home, and that's when the exciting stuff happens, and where they start training the horse to become a runner, and you know, in track racing. Yeah, do check it out. Again, you can find the Criterion. Get this. I know there was a standard MGM Blu-ray. I did have a copy of that, but stay away from it because the transfer is not as good. So find this one if you can. Has a magnificent 4K transfer as well as a DTS mix. It's only in stereo. It's not in 5.1, but anyhow, yeah. Well, that'll do it for this weekend. I don't know if I'm going to be back next weekend. I'm going to have a particularly busy next weekend, so where I'm not going to have as much time to sit and watch some films. So I may squeeze in a movie, but it'll just be a single film. Other than that, maybe look forward to not this coming weekend, but the next weekend. Or yeah, that's going to do it for this weekend. Of course, you'll be seeing this throughout the week. With that, I'm just going to say, from me to you, see you later.